Good evening, good morning if you are in other time zones. Welcome everyone. I'm Vani from Kalari Capital, and I'm really thrilled to have Aneesh Reddy, founder of Capillary Technologies, with us today. In this SaaS from Scratch session, I think Anish's reflections on and his hard earned insights on early monetization, the art of scaling, and of course, the personal growth that goes into leading a dynamic SaaS company. We get to hear all that. Anish has led Capillary from its very beginning, and today it's one of the trusted platforms for many, many global brands in managing customer loyalty and customer engagement. So I think this unique perspective would be very valuable for all of us. And Anish, it's really a pleasure to have you here. I've been wanting to have this conversation, hear from your experiences. You're a pioneer in the SaaS market. You're a pioneer in leading the banner of entrepreneurship from India. So it's really an honor to have you here.
Vani, thanks for having me here. Life has been kind. It's been 16 years running Capillary, and lots of ups, lots of downs. Thankfully, life has been kind enough to help us grow through our downtimes. Hit new highs. Yeah.
So, Anish, there's always this debate: is someone born an entrepreneur? Does it happenstance because something just boom triggers, right? Now, you were early to what you were doing, right? At least from India. And so, did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Did something happen to click? And that's kind of the question always people have in trying to be entrepreneurs. So, where was the origin of the idea and genesis of you choosing to take this path?
Uh, so I come from a family of doctors, Vani. So both my parents are doctors. My brother is a doctor. My sister-in-law is also a doctor. And in that sense, a first-generation entrepreneur, right? So in fact, I still remember when I used to work at ITC before I started up, and when I went and told my dad, that. I'm thinking of starting up. And this was, I think, Jan or Feb of 2008. And starting up was not cool then, if you remember.
Yeah, of
He
course.
actually, he actually looked at me and he was like, what's wrong with you? I had a MIT admit, MIT Masters admittance call. And I didn't take that and I went to ITC. He was super disappointed. Being a doctor, I'm joining ITC. And, you know, uh, and then second time this happened when I left ITC and then said I want to start up. So he was like, he kind of gave up on me and said, look, your brother is getting married in November. Whatever you want to do, you do after that. I was like, I'm not going to spend a penny on my brother's marriage. It's not like it's my sister's marriage. And I've never had to send money home. So it was like that, right? So definitely, I don't think I grew up thinking I wanted to start a business. I mean, you're not oriented that way at all, right? I mean, in a typical Telugu family, all that your parents want to do is send you to the US. So I was kind of brought up with that mindset. So entrepreneurship really happened accidentally in most senses, Vani. So what happened was Krishna, who's my co-founder at Capillary, and I had started the entrepreneurship cell back in 2005 in IIT Kharagpur. Uh, and we, as part of the ESL, we ended up inviting Arjun Malhotra, who's one of the founders of HCL, and a few other very nice entrepreneurs. And the energy was very infecting, right? I mean, and I sometimes joke around that my first startup was actually the ESL. It's done very well. There've been a lot of KGP founders, startups after that. I think. And we were 2 years into our corporate life, both KK and me. He was at Microsoft Research, I was at ITC. both well-paying, nice jobs, but we were just missing this thing of saying, what's the impact that we're having and how is what we are doing contributing to the bigger picture here. And that kept eating us up. And so, one fine morning, it was actually KK's birthday. And we both said, look, I think, let's start up. Then I went and convinced my mom and dad that, look, if this doesn't work in a year or two, I'll give CAT or I'll give GMAT, and I will listen to what you want me to do. Right. So that's kind of how we ended up starting up, really. Yeah.
Today as a parent, less as a venture capitalist, all this sounds familiar. And oh my God, when will the kids ever listen to what I have to say? But so I can relate to your parents' frustration as much as I've done the very same things. But from a parent's point of view, it's a little different, right? So, and carrying them along in this journey is a important part that doesn't carry your family along, not just your parent, because without the family support, it's hard to keep doing this for a decade, 2 decades, and so forth. It's something people don't talk about enough, and I'm glad we opened with that, and I hope it triggers for people to know that it's not just you. It's about getting your support system in place, however reluctantly, but they are your best well-wishers and they have to be part of supporting this journey, at least from giving you their blessings. And don't take money. That's the other part from your family. Take their blessings, but not your money, but not their money. But, it's interesting, 2008, yeah, we've forgotten now, but the world was in a recession. It was the hardest economic period, lots of fear, financial institutions crashing, and consumer confidence very, very low. And what gave you, and either you were clueless to those signals, which, by the way, many times entrepreneurs are, and it works to their advantage. But what gave you the courage, and what were or rather, what were the signals that gave you the courage in a period of such economic uncertainty to go into a nascent, because SaaS was still emerging, especially from India, right? So there were lots of things that would be considered headwinds, but yet you did it and you have succeeded. So what advice would you give out of that experience of that period?
Right. So we started exactly a month before Lehman Brothers tanked. I think Lehman Brothers crashing was the moment, right, that really started the recession off.
Penultimate moment, yeah.
Yeah. So we started August 11th, 2008. Lehman crash September 11th, 2008. Now, what we had done, Vani, was, we basically, we were two kids out of college. We didn't have a big business idea on what we wanted to solve. So we kind of went the investor way. We said, pick two sectors which are growing, and if you do something between those sectors, you will also grow with it, right? So, and retail was just beginning to happen in India. The government had just opened a multi-brand license, so a Levi's could open stores, a Benetton could open stores, Puma could open stores, and then the mobile story was big and growing, right? So we kind of said, let's do something between these two. And for us, actually, if you ask me, I think recessions are the best time to start. And every recession, has every downturn helps you in some ways, right? So in our case, I'll tell you, we went to a lot of folks in retail, a lot of folks in mobile, and said, look, we took kids out of IIT, we can build good software. Tell us what your problems are, right? So and where it helped was the recession meant that the Diwali sales at that time were very poor. The festive season was very poor. So a lot of these folks came back and said, look, our sales are down. Our customers aren't coming back to stores. So if you can help us solve this, although it's a recession, we can buy what you're trying to sell us. Right. So our next question would be saying, do you know who your customers are? And they would say, look, less than 5% of customers, we know who they are. Even if people sign up, they misplace the card. So we said, hey, we can do it on the mobile phone. That's how we two two of I mean that's how we both got into the customer loyalty space because we were trying to solve a problem that existed at that time, right? So, and one thing we did was we said till we have someone willing to pay us money, a customer, we won't write a line of code. Because what we realized was when we went to speak to a lot of folks, what happened is everyone glorifies entrepreneurs, right? Any idea you say, they'll say, "Oh, great, great! This is very good." So we said we need some kind of a filter to say, "Look, is this? Are these guys serious or are these guys?" It's like the Indian no, right? I mean, even our no's are half yes, right? So, and so we put that threshold of saying, "Look, if someone's negotiating, that's when it gets real." Right? I mean, as Indians, you will not buy anything without a negotiation, right? So negotiate, even if it's whatever was the price, right? So our first customer ended up being, Indigo Indus League here, right? So part of Future Group. And it was very small, they liked what we were doing. We said, look, instead of giving cards, we'll use the mobile number as a unique identifier, and no one's going to forget their mobile number. So they'll keep coming back. If you want them to redeem a points or redeem coupons or give some rewards, we'll do all of that on the phone, right? So simple, paperless. And this sounds interesting, but it's a recession. So we can't, and our initial pricing model was you have to buy a server, pay us 5 lakh upfront, and then 20% AMC, right? Which is how software was sold back then. And they said, look, we can't do all that. We have these marketing agencies who charge us monthly. So can you charge us something per store per month? And even the per store per month came because they said, look, we want to try it out in 2-3 stores. If it works, then we will roll it out. Right? So we very accidentally got into saying, okay, $50, it used to be 2,000 rupees then, 2,000 rupees per store per month. And okay, you can't buy servers, fine. I put my credit card on AWS, and that's how we started. Right? So we very accidentally bounced into, I remember out of our first 5 customers, only one customer said, okay, I'll pay you 1 lakh as upfront for license. Right? So everyone else said, look, we don't have the money for doing this. Right? So I feel in a recession, people have to do something to make sales happen. Right? So people are willing to take those risks. In a recession, you have to work harder. Right? So, and the second thing beautiful about recessions, at least for me, was, our first product was built between 5 interns at IIT Kharagpur and 5 interns at Dhirubhai Ambani, DAICT. And we were paying people 5,000 rupees a month.
Gosh.
So, and that was good money, if you think about it. And even, in fact, our initial hires, a lot of them still work with us, were essentially folks who, we would go to these campuses, hire, or were people who are not happy with what they were doing at Infi or at TCS or and some pretty like Yahoo, Google, etc. Right? So because it was a recession, I thought we could get some of the best people to come and join us. Right? So I'm a big believer that recessions are great times to start. Also what happens in a recession is you can't build faffy products. You'll end up building stuff because only that stuff will sell, right? You'll end up building stuff which is high ROI, really solves a deep problem. So money is not going to be easy and free, right? So I feel recessions are great times to build.
So, Anish, you use this word accidentally a couple of times, but at the back of that is an entrepreneur or founders, you and your co-founder, who were active listeners, either subconsciously or otherwise, right? And one of the challenges that I see sitting where I do is sometimes we get trapped into our own vision and what we think the market needs, which of course is necessary, but we then turn off the listening, not deliberately, but we are not, that's the blind spot. It's the biggest blind spot actually, right? So this balance of, because nothing happens accidentally, you could have ignored the signals, right? So the listening part of it and yet continuing to keep to your core conviction. Talk about how can people, balance that tightrope walk?
I think I think what the market is the biggest king, right? So what you're hearing from customers or the broader, eventually matters, right? In fact, even we made a mistake, right? So when we started off trying to sell this in India, which did very well. But most people were already telling us this is in 2008, right? That you can't build a large SaaS company out of India. The market is just not there. People won't pay for software. And forget about SaaS, a large software company out of India. People won't pay for it. And that problem actually ended up hitting us more towards 2018, 19. 12 years into building the company, right? Because by then we were a $30 million revenue company, or a $29 million revenue company to be exact. And we were probably in a market that was at best 200 to 50 million. So you're already at 10-12% of the market. So you're now going to find growing at 40-50% very hard. We had to, and it hit us late, but then we had to reinvent the company in 2020, figure out the US again, make a big pivot, go from retail only to other verticals. So I at least felt that every time, and I used to be this foolhardy guy saying you can build large SaaS companies out of India. I mean, out of India for sure, but selling only to India, right? So, and I'd say, what right do you have to win in the US? We have a right to win here, and all that stuff, right? You justify it to yourselves all the time. And I must say that every single time that I've ignored what the market is telling me, I think I've had to go correct it like 5-6 years later. I think I'd much rather have conviction on our execution capabilities, the team we're building, than on just ideas, right? I think even initially when we decided to do loyalty, like ours was a very open question, right? We would ask you saying, what are your problems? Right? And so we had 50 conversations over 6 months. We basically met everyone we could from our networks who were doing anything in retail or in mobile, right? And we then realized 30 people had the same problem, and then we said, okay, let's build this. Right? So even today, when we want to, and there've been years when, obviously when success happens, it gets to your head sometimes. I've gone and said, we want to build this product, right? And we built it, and we could never get it to sell. While every time I've gone the other way around of actually speaking to 20-30 customers and saying, do you want us to build this? How much will you pay for it? Those have been far more successful modules, products, features for us than, Aneesh just coming up and saying, hey, I think we should build this because I feel good about it. Right? So I would definitely say, even if you're a super smart entrepreneur, I think use those to come up with hypotheses. But you have to go test those hypotheses with real customers, see if what the pricing is, etc., before you really invest money in building and selling, right? So,
there's a comment question from Nikhil that says Capillary had adopted a monetization model from day one. So, which of course most companies don't and should, right? So, what helped you to monetize from day one? And maybe a way that I'd like to ask that question is, do you have a philosophy on your cash flow strategy? And which is more than, of course, just monetization. How do you approach it? From a policy,
today, of
philosophy,
course,
and
yeah.
strategy of business. Yeah.
Today, of course, we're a very different company, right? We're much larger, we're profitable, we generate cash, so some of those are very different. But back then, we were using this pricing and will people pay as a mode of validation more than anything else, right, Vani? So, especially in a recession, if people are willing to pay, and I think 2 points there, right? So, one, in a large enterprise, and we sell to large enterprises, even if you have to get a 50,000 rupee check signed, 1 lakh rupee check signed, the individual will have to go to their boss, right? There is always going to be some checks and balances, and we were, and because there is that 50,000, 1 lakh, or whatever, right? Our initial customers, you pay us 50,000 rupees a month. not meaningful at all, right? But the fact that they had to pay us that would suddenly make this POC that we were doing with them a joint baby. That it was not just our headache because they had also got the 50,000 signed that, that POC we had also had to get it delivered. Sorry, I dropped my headphones. Give me one sec.
You still have one working?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So I feel like again, the other thing that from a cash flow standpoint, look, I think products need money to build. There is no two sides to that, right? So I would separate that out from buying business at a very low cost. Right? A lot of times I feel, and this is a mistake that I've also done for many years. We would sign up for deals at prices where it just didn't make sense, right? And then there was this very hard time we had in like the 2019s, right? When we really were at a place where we weren't growing very fast. We'd hit some scale, but we were burning money like crazy, because we had a 100-member sales team and we were just trying to take deals at like crazy price. And we decided to turn ourselves around, to a profitable company the next year. So we were at 29 million with a 16 million loss. And I think 5 quarters later, we actually got to like 30 million, but and we were cash positive, right? And that was a very interesting journey because what we realized was a lot of customers who were very low gross margin and couldn't work for us was what we had to cut to get to profitability, right? So the way I would break this cash flow problem is saying, don't buy business at a very bad margin or at very low cost. You have to invest in product. There is no option on that, right? So make sure that the dollars you're investing are more to, build a great product than to just buy cheap business, right? So because all the cheap business you buy, you will have to go fix it later. And changing an enterprise contract is very, very hard, right? Changing pricing on
nearly impossible.
Right.
So you talked about international expansion, right? And how maybe you could have done it before or not. How should today's SaaS founders, because you started in a different time, right? How should today's SaaS founders think about when they should expand into international markets? And is today this question of build for India different? Can you build a large company just for India today versus when you started? And also, when should founders think about international expansion, which may be different from the time you did it? How should they think about it?
Yeah, so ours was a story of 2008 to 2011 was India only. 2012 we started Middle East, Southeast Asia. And for 7, 8 years we did India, Middle East, Southeast Asia, right? So till 2020, 2019, 20. 2020 is when we started US and then US Europe, right? So today US Europe is about 70% of our revenues. India, Middle East, Southeast Asia is about 30% of revenues. I would say, look, the world has changed significantly, right? So back in 2013, 14, when we were trying to sell in the UK and US, I was at this retail week event in the UK, and I was talking to someone and I was trying to pitch Capillary to them, and the guy said, "Look, we don't outsource services to India." Right? So they wasn't even believed that you could build products out of India and do the breed like that. In the last 1 year, we've won lots of large deals in both markets. No one has asked me that, why am I like, so there's more acceptance to companies building from India to companies in the US, right? So I would almost say, maturity in India is different from maturity in the US in terms of a product. So my recommendation would be, you can probably get your first customer from India. Otherwise, I would actually say, look, from day zero, you should start building for the US. A lot of times I feel that we had the curse of being successful in India. Because of that, we didn't actually take, a lot of my, similar cohort co-founders couldn't figure India, got into the US much sooner. It's anyway a 4-5 year journey to get to any meaningful 4-5 million like product market fit in any new country, right? So, and we had to reinvent ourselves when you're a 13-year-old company and you're 1,000 people, much harder, right? As compared to when you're a nimbler 10 people org, so my recommendation would definitely be saying, look, day one, I think you should start thinking of the US. If you have very smart customers in Asia who are willing to buy from you, like really top-notch customers who are ahead of the game, probably 1, 2, 3, 4 at best. But if you want to build a large company, I don't think you can just build it on India or Asia. And we're some distance from that changing, Vani. I'd love to see, us get to like 500 crores of revenues between India, Middle East, South Asia, but I don't know of more than 3 or 2 SaaS companies which are beyond 30, 40 million of ARR from India, right?
So, Anish, there's from one of the audience a nice, I would say, compliment that Capillary also saw the importance of UX and emphasized on user-first design. The and that made me think. In fact, oftentimes you talked about US having a much more mature market from receptiveness to new products and so forth. But there is, for an Indian entrepreneur, a product sales marketing gap. If they have not worked in SaaS companies in US already, or for a SaaS company in US already. So, and you were fresh from college, and in India, the product management and UI UX is really not something that's taught, right? And it's not something that you build skill or intuitive talent for. So, that discipline doesn't really exist unless you work in a company and learn it. How did you do it right? And also, then, how should founders think about investing in this early? How should they go about it?
Yeah, so I think, 10 years ago, Vani, I would agree with you that product management or design is not good in India. I think this was a 2014-15 problem, right? When we were all setting up iSpirit and early product companies, we would all debate this, right? Today, I think that's not the case, right? I mean, look at every every large good tech company has a center in Bangalore where they actually build products, right? Whether you're an Oracle, whether you're a SAP, whether you're I'm just using Bangalore for a name, but Hyderabad, wherever, right? So we had got this, our first UX designer in 2015-16 came from Intuit, right? And that changed our view on UI UX, on clean UIs, on don't like complicate it too much, that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's a little bit of a solved problem today. If you, especially as a founder or as the management team, are saying we want clean UIs and we will get the right people for design, right? So and that talent, if you ask me, is available. In fact, for a while we would work with these third parties, right? Because we were not able to hire that kind of talent. Everyone wanted to just go and work for a consumer internet type play. So we had a lean design team inside, and then we would work with these design studios outside, right? Because people who worked there really wanted project type work. They wanted things to change very fast. That was okay for us. We had a core team, and you had a design studio outside. But if you really want to sell in markets like the US or the West, you really need slick design. You really need the product has to sell, right? So I still think as India, we have a lot of work to do on sales and marketing. I think inherently Americans are great at sales and marketing. They can sell ice to an Eskimo. I think that's a skill set that we still have to build as a country. And my suggestion would be that if you're building for the US, then you'd be closer to the market. Spend at least like 90 days in year in the US as the founder. One of the co-founders should hopefully move some of those, right, to solve that problem really.
So, just then changing gears a little bit, right? Um, as you've grown, is there a DNA that you built, or has it sort of evolved over time? On how do you grow inorganically? How do you think about new opportunities? How to be expansionist, right? Because without that, companies have to continuously demonstrate. As long as they are there, they have to continuously offer a certain kind of growth to build shareholder value and value for themselves also, of course. But build versus buying, finding new markets, product evolution. What is your framework? You do strategy every year. How do you come up with this?
I think, Vani, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest tasks of a founder is to keep increasing the addressable market. Right? As your company is growing, you have to keep increasing the addressable market. I don't think you have a choice on that. And I think, at least for us, what's really worked is trying to see 1 degree of separation items. Right? I do loyalty in retail. Can I do it in consumer goods, or can I do it in automobiles, or can I do it in healthcare, or can I do it in right? So that's 1 degree of separation. We did India very well. Then we got out into Middle East and Southeast Asia, right? So I'd say from where you are as a business, try and do 1 degree of separation stuff to increase the TAM. Now, there's also a lot of stuff about what you are as a company, if you're especially trying to do M&A, right? We are a very strong tech and engineering heavy company, right? So we've always had like terrific engineering teams, great product. And what that means is if you're going and buying a slightly inferior product from the market, it just won't work for us, right? So we did a couple of acquisitions which were not so great products, and I realized that look, I don't think that works in this culturally. That team will feel like they're like a little bit inferior, right? Which is never good. So we figured that our model of acquisitions has to be buying customers and then migrating them onto our platforms, right? So if you're doing a build versus buy, if you're doing an M&A inorganic strategy, I think you have to tailor that inorganic strategy to who you are as a company, right? So, and what kind of customers are you selling to? Like, for example, we sell to the best enterprises globally, right? We have 15 of the Fortune 200 as customers now, and these are all guys who just buy best of breed, right? So if I go and buy an inferior tech company, I'll never be able to sell it, right? So I think some of those are important, but I think more importantly, what you have to keep thinking and we now don't do strategy every year, right? I think strategy takes time to play out, and strategy really needs like deep effort to come up with the right strategy. We do strategy now once in 4 years.
Wow.
And when we do strategy, we spend 3 months, it's 40, 45 people. We tear the whole company apart, right? So we actually use the
You get
External
external moderator. Do you do it internally?
We work with External, Saiti and the team. They call it as business design, which is essentially like the strategy type work. And what we do is we tear the business apart, right? So you look at what you're doing today, how are you relevant to your customers? Can you get more market share there? Where are you versus where you can be in the same segment? Then a third thing, which is roof, which is what are the 1 degree of separation areas? And we did it in 2020. It took us 4 months, 40 people, 2 days a week of work, right? And at the end of that, we came out saying, look, and strategy is also about what you should not do as much as it is about what you should do, right? So that time we came up with saying, these are businesses we have to shut down, like the China business, our e-commerce platform play, our SMB mid-market business. And these are businesses we have to get into, like the US business, multi-vertical, some of those stories, right? So, and it took us 4 years to actually execute that. Now, what that also meant was, we went from this $30 million company down to like 16 million. Now our numbers are public. They're on our website. We publish our annual report every year on our website, right? So this year we're at 70, 75 million now, right? So from 15 to 75 million in about 4 years, right? So if you get strategy right, it takes you 3, 4 years to implement, and it takes time for anything to build momentum and change, right? Strategy, I at least don't believe that strategy is a every year story. I think execution is a everyday story. Strategy is probably a once in a 3, 4 years, very deep thinking, very deep work, lots of conviction before you go make those changes.
No, this is great perspective and good fodder for founders to think through how to work on strategy in a meaningful, sticky way. Changing gears a little bit, Anish, what would you consider as the hard decisions you have had to make, right? And whether the same things are hard for somebody else or not, something is hard for everyone. So how do we get to make those hard decisions? What have you learned about making hard decisions?
Yeah, no, I think I think a couple of things, Vani, right? So first is you have to eventually give in to like doing the right thing, right? And the right things are sometimes very hard, right? In COVID, for example, we had to let go people who had spent 10 years with us,
Hmm.
right? It was and it was probably also the first time we were really laying off, right? But you had to do it, right? I mean, we were a retail tech play. Our 80% of our cash flows had evaporated overnight. Uh, I could have taken the until then, we would find it very hard to let anyone go, right? But we were the first to move in the market. March 27th, even before anyone started firing, we said, look, we have little cash left. We want to make sure everyone who's going out gets at least 4 to 7 months of severance. Uh, and we had to take those hard calls, right? So what we ended up doing was we let go 250 people and we then set up a outplacement cell. And we got like 220 of them placed in other SaaS companies that wanted to hire from us, in the next like 30, 40 days. Right? I feel at least what helped me is a lot of times that these are the hard calls you have to take, that this leadership team is not working for you, or this is wrong, or I feel you just have to accept. As founders, we keep fighting with our own minds in some senses, right? I think accepting and taking the hard calls, whether it is like when we this extra 10x thing I was telling you about, right? At the end of it, came out that we had bought a business by spending $30 million, and it was going nowhere. And I was trying to revive it for like 6, 7 years, right? I had to somewhere bite the bullet and say, okay, you spent 30% of your equity on that business, but it's done, it's dead. Now you have to like shut it down and move on, right? So I feel at least that thing I've learned from, probably it came from my first Vipassana, was that accept, the writing is on the wall. You know it halfway through your heart that, look, this isn't working out. It's just to. The second is, I think I'm a fairly spiritual guy of late, and I do believe that we give ourselves a lot of credit and a lot of grief for what happens,
Hmm.
right? In most cases, what has to happen is going to happen. Look at yourselves as instruments in that work. And we we can take all the credit for everything good that went at Capillary, and I can take all the grief for whatever wrong went, but it doesn't help anyone. So I think
Hmm.
acceptance and just not rolling in the credit or the grief, I think helps.
So, Anish, I think somewhere being a founder, everybody has to find that faith or whether you call it spirituality or whatever it is, somewhere you have to find your deeper reserves basically, and whatever process gets you there, right? But talk a little bit about funding, because this again, there is no perfect answer. Sometimes a company gets into a mode of spending for growth when market is not ready for growth, right? And obviously, the venture capitalists also make a mistake in funding a company when it's not ready for growth, right? So, how do you think about raising money, relationship with investors, and putting the money to generate value, exponential value? How do you solve that equation?
I think that's a great question, actually. So one, I think it's multiple questions as well. So let me just answer the question of growth, right? So we've done this a few times, right? So we made this mistake of we raised this massive round in 2015, a $40 million round. And we went from a sales and marketing team of 12 people to a sales and marketing team of 40, like actually 100 people over the next 3-4 years, right? 40 sales guys, then pre-sales, inside sales, marketing, all of that, right? So I think the thing to do is actually first invest in demand gen. See if your demand gen is scaling, if you're getting enough leads, enough conversations, and then scale the thing backwards, right? Most people don't do that, right? You go and hire 10 sales guys, you then go and hire delivery people thinking the business is going to come. So I feel there is a method to that madness of first investing in, are you getting more leads, and then go backwards from there, right? So we did this mistake in 2015 till 2018. Now, whenever we open a new market, our first view is to say, am I getting enough leads? And then I will hire more sales folks. Then I will hire more of that, right? That's on the S&M side. The second side is product, right? I do believe that it is a flat world. The best product will sell globally, right? You should see the size of Salesforce's revenue in India. It's crazy the way they've grown, right? So large enterprises in India will also buy a Salesforce, right? So I do feel that the area where you have to be ahead of the market, ahead on your investments, is actually product. It's not sales and marketing, right? So that's an area where I would say. So funding for me, we've been very lucky to have great angels, very good Series A investors, terrific, growth investors through the years, and again, right, we made a ton of mistakes through it, and all our investors have reinvested in us. Some of our investors have left funds, set up their own funds, come back and again invested in us. I think it's a relationship of trust, right? You have to be the first guy telling them, look, this is not going right. Right? I've been sometimes told by my board that I'm pessimistic and I'm just too honest about stuff, but I think it's good to be that with your investors, right? So
Yeah.
because that then then they are solutioning out of the situation with you. We raised $5 million in 20 days in COVID. I just had to call people saying, look, here's the plan.
Wow.
I'm going to let go so many people, but
Yeah.
I also need you guys to put like 5 million in the next 20 days because I need that money to pay severances. Right. So, I mean, like, I feel, the other big task of a founder is to make sure there is money in the bank. Right. It's as simple as that. So, I think you should always keep at least 6 to 10 months of money in the bank. Fundraising takes time. So plan ahead for it. We had this rule very early in life, very early in Capillary, which was we would spend 2 hours a week meeting people outside the company. Right, 2 hours a week. And mostly it would be investors who were writing to you, whether it was angels or and most of our investors knew us at least 2 years before they came into the company. Right. So I actually think it's and they're smart people, right? They ask you the hard questions, they give you the hard feedback. Now, it's not necessary that you listen to all the feedback, but it's an interesting viewpoint, right? It's just to,
It builds long-term relationships without having any specific monetary immediate task, right?
and the good thing is they also see that, look, you committed something, you met 95% of it, or you bet that. So and we've never used a banker to raise even a dollar in the company. We
Wow.
raised $300 million till now. We've never used a banker to raise a
That
dollar. And
needs to
it's
be
just been that,
underlined, double underlined.
it's been because every time we've had to raise, I would just go back to the 5, 7 people who, have kept meeting us every 3, 6 months for the last 2 years. Because it shows interest from them. They are tracking you. And we had a rule that, we'll speak to 5. If 2 give term sheets, then we will not go to a banker. Otherwise, we'll go to a banker. We pretty much had that play out every time. Right. So I don't think it's anything wrong spending 5% of your time in a week, meeting investors, or meeting external people. It brings great perspective. Right. So on funding, I think those are some pieces. Yeah.
Look, if nothing else, on 300 million, you saved over 9 million in fees, not having bankers, right? That is a straight investment into the company. And I think business development is another area that's completely under-addressed, undervalued by founders, and spending, having a weekly rhythm or some structure to have you extend your external relationships. I think it's very smart. Advice. Anish, to wrap up, I'm going to just kind of switch into more just personal questions. Love to understand everybody is wired differently, what motivates them, how they succeed. So, for you, what would be harder, a week of silence, Vipassana, or a day without digital tech?
I do a 10-day Vipassana every year, Vani. In fact, so for me, I like my Vipassanas. In fact, I don't have email or WhatsApp or a browser also on my phone, right? So I actually use email, WhatsApp, everything on my desktop. So I'm not uh, the day I realized this was, I'm my
So,
wife's
you are
wedding.
not the tech addict that we all are.
It took me a lot of time to pull myself out of that. I realized that, even if I'm sitting with friends, even if I'm sitting with my wife, we are at a dinner at a nice place, I'm just like, checking mail, right? And it's just this compulsive disorder, right? That and I said, look, I have to get rid of it, right? So I check mail 4, 5 times a day now, and at the same time, I check my WhatsApp, and I think life has been great. I don't think anyone has told me that I'm not responsive. But I'm at least in the moment all the time. I'm in the conversation, right?
Of
So,
course.
and you should
When
all
you
try it
say
out.
that, I'm thinking one tip to offer is, I can't tell you how many times this has happened or happens more frequently now, Anish. Somebody would have come to pitch for us, right? So hence this is like the critical hour for them. Their phone is not on silent, it goes off, only for them to pick up and say, I'll call you back later. Now, if it's not a medical emergency of your family and it's somebody who can call back later, what would be the point of picking up a phone in the middle of a VC meeting? But I can't tell you how many times this happens actually. And I think people are completely unconscious to the signals that sends out, but it is what it is.
Yeah. No, I think I think digital detox is a must. I think it
Yeah.
just got too much. Yeah.
So you talked about being doing 10 days of Vipassana and being somebody who's spiritual. So during your most challenging moment or time, would you have something that grounds you? What grounds you?
So I sit for an hour every morning. I get up at 4:30, 5 to 6 is my hour when I sit down. Right. So, and those are times when, I feel, and intuition happens in silence, right? Some of your best ideas come when your mind is actually still, right? So this whole thing of, that you have to take this hard call of firing so many people who have worked with you for 10 years in the middle of a lockdown, that actually came up as a thing saying, look, if you have to save this company, you have to do this. I mean, you don't have an option, right?
Hmm.
So I think as compared to in an active thing, I would be like, why is this happening to me? Why is COVID happening? Why are we in retail tech? We just turned profitable. Like, I think just getting that hours of silence, when your past conditioning is not just like trapped you in there. For me, I think it's that 1 hour. right? In the morning, if I would take any big decisions, it's usually after that 1 hour is when I sit down and say, look, okay, let's do, so yeah. And for entrepreneurs, I just feel, look, we go through a lot, right? You go through a lot of,
Ups and downs.
it's like a sine wave of
Almost.
overconfidence and deep pessimism on yourselves, right? I mean, like, you blame yourselves for all the mistakes you've done. You give yourselves credit for all the stuff that's happened to you. It's just like, there's never this nice line, right? So I think it's hence very, very important to spend that time once in a year, once 1 hour a day, just cleaning your mind up, right? Just cleaning all the junk out and getting to a clean mind. You know.
So, if a last question for me, if there is one skill that you could transmit or offer to people, one advice, what would that be to people you're mentoring?
That's a good one. I think I think it would change by who they are. You know, but if you're starting up, it's generally this thing of saying meet 50 people before you like even write a line of code. I think that's worked very well for us. If you're a late stage founder, if you run your company for 8-10 years, you're definitely in this place where you're constantly blaming yourself for all the stuff that went wrong. It happens. I mean, whenever I talk about it, you can almost see the aha on the other guy's face saying, how did this guy read my mind? It happens, right? So I think once you're 6-7 years into a founder journey, it's very important to take care of yourself.
Hmm.
I feel most companies sell out early or don't end up living their true potential because the founder is burnt out, you've not taken care of yourselves. So I feel this is a marathon, right? I mean, good companies take 20 years to be built.
Hmm.
So if you believe that it takes 20 years to be built, then you will take care of your relationships at home, your friends, your own physical health, your own mental health. That's the big advice I would say, that if you're in for the long run, please know that this is a 20-year journey. Uh,
Hmm.
so please make sure you live all four quadrants, right? The four quadrants for me are, there's the professional, the company side, there's the personal, family, kids, all of that. There is a spiritual side, and then there's your physical and mental health, right? So, and in the spiritual side, I also would include community and things like that, right? So giving back to the community and some of that.
Anish, it feels so good to have this holistic conversation and, see you so grounded with your success and with your challenges, of course, that were part of the journey to get here. And I really appreciate this hour. I took away many things, and I know this will be useful and move people in their own way, for each person in their own way. So thank you for making this time, and I wish you and team at Capillary many, many years of tremendous growth.
Thank you, Ani. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. We are going to sign off right now. Thank you.